AI giant Anthropic is now in a legal battle with the Pentagon as the two sides continue to clash over Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth's labeling of the company as a, quote, supply chain risk. The showdown raising concerns among experts about government surveillance with AI. Here to break down all of this is the Hill's deputy managing editor, Sarakshi Rai. Sarakshi, thanks so much for joining us. Let's start with the lawsuit that Anthropic filed yesterday. What can you tell us about that?
That's right. So the artificial intelligence company Anthropic filed a lawsuit against the Trump administration, really challenging the Pentagon's decision to label the company and its products as a supply chain risk. And this comes after negotiations over safety guardrails fell apart earlier this month. Now, in this lawsuit, which was filed in a federal court in California, it basically argues that the designation and the president President Trump's order for all federal agencies to cease to use Anthropic are unprecedented and unlawful. Now, the AI firm has asked the court to reverse the Pentagon's decision, warning that the consequences of this case are enormous. Now, we know that the supply chain risk designation has typically been reserved for foreign adversaries and restricts defense contractors from using the company's products, Judy. So, a lot going on here right now.
Absolutely. What is the Trump administration and what is Anthropic saying about this escalating legal clash?
Now, this clash has been ongoing for the last couple of weeks, but Anthropic has said that it's taken to court as a last resort. Now, this comes via the company's lawyers. They're alleging that the federal government has retaliated against the firm for adhering to its protected viewpoint on the subject of great public significance, which is AI safety and the limitations of its own AI models. Now, the lawyers have also accused the Trump administration of trying to destroy the economic value of Anthropic. Now, the Department of Defense basically wanted Anthropic to grant the agency unfettered access to its models across all lawful purposes, while Anthropic wanted assurance that its AI models would not be used for fully autonomous weapons or domestic mass surveillance. Now, that has been a red line for Anthropic since the beginning of this battle in terms of AI use, in terms of its autonomous weapons programming. And so that is the main sticking point that basically led to the negotiations falling apart between the Pentagon and Anthropic, Judy.
You mentioned sticking points. One of those sticking points is between the two sides that Anthropic didn't want its AI platform Claude used for mass surveillance. The Pentagon said that was an unnecessary request. They shouldn't make any demands of the U.S. military. What can you tell us about the concerns experts are raising about government surveillance with AI?
That's right. During the negotiations with the Department of Defense, Anthropic basically set two red lines on domestic mass surveillance and autonomous weapons, right? They were arguing that AI is not reliable enough to make life or death decisions while changing what is possible with government surveillance. So basically, the Pentagon then took these red lines that Anthropic had and rejected their argument and insisted that it should be able to use AI for whatever it deems to fall under all lawful purposes. Now, that is why negotiations fell apart earlier this month. And we know that Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei has said that the company would not, in good conscience, agree to the Pentagon terms. Now, we've also heard from defense experts who have expressed concern about the government's decision. Not only does it set a troubling precedent, they argue, but it also means that the administration is banishing a key technology vendor that's really been lauded currently for its diligence with respect to AI safety, something that these defense experts think the Pentagon should take into account, given that the two red lines are for mass surveillance of the American public, as well as its weapon system and the use of it in an autonomous fashion, Judy.
Sarakshi, as you know, OpenAI faced massive backlash for signing its own deal with the Pentagon after Anthropic's fell apart, with one of the concerns being about surveillance. OpenAI appears to have bowed to public pressure on that issue, and they're now making clear that their systems won't be used for any domestic surveillance. What could that public outrage mean for AI giants and their relationships with the Pentagon moving forward?
This is really an interesting battle, Judy, because what we're seeing is that, even though the Pentagon has been feuding with Anthropic, they have been using Anthropic's Claude AI in terms of some of its military, expeditions in terms of Iran. Now, what we're seeing is that, this comes at a significant cost in terms of efficiency, because if they're going to be changing vendors, it's going to cost the Department of Defense a lot. Now, we also heard from other industry executives, including OpenAI CEO Sam Altman, Apple CEO Tim Cook, and Google CEO Sundar Pichai, and we've seen them in the last couple of months really rubbing elbows with President Trump at the White House. But we've seen that Anthropic CEO Dario Amodei was not rubbing shoulders at these same events that the other tech CEOs were at. He was very absent, and he didn't attend Trump's inauguration last year as well. Now we know that Amodei has also told staffers earlier this month that the administration doesn't like Anthropic because it hasn't donated or offered dictator-style praise to Trump, and this is coming from a report in the information. So, really what we're seeing is some pushback from Anthropic CEO, but also in terms of, we're seeing other tech CEOs really come to the table and mingle and meet with Trump administration officials as well, Judy.
All right, Sarakshi Rai, always so good at breaking it down for us. Thanks so much for joining.